Hello. Happy to see everyone today. It's so funny. I was telling someone I'm from Maryland. I work at the University of Maryland, and so usually at these things I know every face. So happy to see new faces, and feel free to come talk to me at lunch or any other time about this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about reporting tools, and one tool in particular that a couple of the other folks have mentioned this morning. And so I'm just going to get started here. So we're talking about quantifying best management practices at the residential scale and tracking those. And so we're calling what we've developed the tracking tool. So that's how I'll refer to it in this presentation. Okay, so what are the challenges involved with tracking, right? So Tom mentioned that we need a lot of residential practices to add up to anything that we can use, right? So we don't get much bang for the buck on the individual scale, although 70% of land is privately owned, right? Residentially owned, and so we have to get them engaged in this process, and we have to get them to start looking at stormwater solutions on their own property. So we have this, all of these WIPs, these TMDLs, these MS4s, the NPDES permit, and we have to meet everything, right? And we have to have bang for the buck, nutrient reductions, and how do we do that? It's all on the horizon. And so we have these other systems for reporting big practices, stream restoration, nutrients, bioretention nutrients. Okay, so we have those in place at the county scale, at the federal scale, okay? So we need them at the local scale. And so we're looking at over the horizon, and we're trying to figure out how do we aggregate these practices so that we get nutrient efficiency to add up. And so I'm going to reference T-Rex trying, if anyone knows, throughout this presentation, because it's a very good example. So we give T-Rex a bass, and he can't reach it, he can't play it, right? And so it's the same thing. We have these things out there, and people are starting to do them, but we don't know what's happening, and we need a way of tracking this. So different incentive programs have different ways of tracking their individual projects. We have, Montgomery County does a great job of tracking all of the projects that go into their incentive program, but they may not be getting a full scope of what's happening and be able to use that information in the aggregate to feed back to Mass, CAS, FAST, etc. So we are working with Towson GIS program, Maryland Sea Grant, and a few others, and we're developing an interactive mapping and tracking tool for these best management practices at the residential scale that'll feed back into the county GIS layers and information, and as I mentioned, the CAS, MAS, FAST. So what we're doing is we need to develop this online data entry system. So we're using these GIS layers to build this system. So we're going to be able to give verified data information, and I'll get to that in a second, to the counties or local governments or NGOs that want to use this information. And we also want something for the residents so that they see that they're making progress in meeting nutrient reduction goals. We are also, along with the GIS-based system, developing a mobile app. We have a great GIS intern who volunteered for this, so that was a good use of resources. And so people will be able to go online at a computer or on their mobile app and enter their BMP that they've installed at their property, and it'll tag it in the system. And then someone will go out and verify that and actually place it into the system and run the nutrient calculations. And so we are working with the most updated information. We are working with Tom and Cecilia now to make sure that the nutrient efficiency numbers are getting into that program. So what kind of BMPs are accepted? Well, we've talked about a lot of them today. Rain gardens, rain barrels, conservation landscaping. So a lot of these practices don't necessarily have nutrient numbers yet with them, but they're built in for the time when they potentially can. So we include pet waste campaigns or fertilization pledges, bay-wise landscaping. So some of the stuff that's happening out there that doesn't necessarily have a nutrient number right now, and we're going to work towards that, but we'll have it built into the system as well so people can add all of the great practices that they're doing at the residential scale. So we're getting closer. We give T-Rex a banjo. It's getting a little bit closer to, some system for dealing with this problem. But we have a big gap in how do we maintain and verify these practices, right? So this was mentioned earlier. It's a little overwhelming for people to think all of these LIDs are going to go in, and then how are we going to make sure they're working? What's going on? So for this tool, we're going to be, and I welcome any ideas. We're going to be working with Watershed Stewards Academies, Master Gardeners, Baywide trained folks, Master Naturalists, anyone who's interested in stormwater that wants to be a trained expert volunteer will be able to come to trainings and hope to work with Tom and Cecilia and the Alliance on some of that stormwater audit stuff so that it's all in one place and they're getting this full training on this information. So once they're a trained volunteer, they'll be able to input the actual, verify that the practice is in the ground and go back to the system and enter it in. So we'll have an online mapping portion. You'll be able to see pounds, volume, all of those things for the residential output that looks nice and you feel like you have some impact. And so we're sort of starting to get there. So in the spring, in a month or two, we're going to launch in 3 Maryland counties this pilot. We're going to hopefully get a lot of feedback, and then we hope to expand that to Maryland and Virginia soon after, the full state. So we've given him the ukulele and he can play. And we're hoping that the tool gets us one step closer to meeting all our nutrient reductions and compounding them together to get a bigger bang for the buck. And so I just want to wrap up and thank all of these folks for being involved and, just leave you with some T-Rex trying different things. He gets there. We'll get there too.